All right, we're back. It's COMP397, Web Game Programming, and it's week 6, lesson 6, part 1. And we're broadcasting and recording at the same time just from a safeguard perspective. Plus, I'm running a virtual machine. Oh, yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on, but thank God I got 16 gigs and a terabyte SSD, or else there'd be none of this, right? It'd be bad. Anyway, so what we left off last time is just to recant where we were. We kind of have this demo going on. We're talking about slot machines. This is officially slot machine day 2, right, kind of thing. Now, right now, it doesn't look like anything because this is just game start, back, game end kind of thing. But what we were doing last time is building up a set of assets for us to use. So if you look at the assets, we have back button and bet 10 and all this kind of stuff that we were using to create our environment for the game, right? Now remember, what we're going to try and do is incorporate the script that I gave you guys for your assignment with the background that we have, right? So that's the one thing. Now we do need a few more assets, and like I said before, I probably have a lot of that already here that I'm going to try and use. I'm just going to pull them out into the other screen there. Let me see if I can do that. So I have them like I showed you before. They're like those fruits that I used. I'm not going to change them only because if I start doing that, then it'll be we won't finish, right? And it's not just about creating it's not about just creating assets here. I just did one asset creation class. I don't want to go into too much detail about that, but I want to start using some of this stuff. And I also want to talk about Spreadsheets today and how to incorporate those again. I kind of showed you one time on how to do that, but I want to get into that one more time again today because of, is it here or is it in the other one? I think it's in the other side. Let me just go back one. Oh, it's GitHub. It's right here. Hey. So I have this other group of assets that I used in Slot Machine version 2 that I did previously. And if I go into the images, I have all these other assets like the banana and so on. If I hover over these things to know how big they are, a lot of times Windows will tell us that it's 150 by 120. But remember what we had last time. How do we figure this out? How do we figure out this was wrong? This is our bet line, 150 by 120. These symbols are 150 by 120, each one of them, right? So they're a little bit large, and we're going to have to, in order for us to use them in our game, we're going to have to just do minor modifications so that we can use them. And let me explain why, right? So let's get back into this. I'm not going to do too much more of this today, but I need to do a little bit only because I need to get you to the place where we can actually have a working machine here, right? And then we'll talk about some of this stuff. Okay, so in our slot machine assets, last time we also had incorporated an Excel worksheet, right, that I was talking about. And I use this a lot of times because I want to know how big my tiles are. And if you notice, my width and my height, right, my width and my height is how big my tiles are. My tiles should only be 69 by 69, right? They're square tiles. This is good. My tiles that I had from before were 150 by 120. So that's a totally different size. This would not work properly for my game, right? So I'm going to select all for a second. Let's try that again. Select all, right? And I'm not sure if I can go back the other way, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to kind of copy these, see if I can go back to my view here. And then what I'll do is I'll call a new folder. I'll say previous assets, because that's the one I was working with. And then we'll talk about how to use a texture packer today a little bit. So I've got my banana, my bar, and all this other stuff. I don't need my bet buttons because I already have my own bet buttons, so I'm going to get rid of those. But I want to use the ones that I already have. My blank I definitely need, but it's just I can create that very quickly. They're also GIF images, which are good, but and I use them for a reason. The reason why I use GIFs as opposed to pings is because PNG images are great, but they can also have transparency if you want to. It really depends on the kind of game you want to make. Sometimes what happens is transparencies, when you're animating something, especially on a white background, may look weird, right? So sometimes there's a bit of some other stuff that goes on. So you know, in this particular application, you may not want to do that. Power button I don't need right now, but I'll keep it here. And the reset button, we don't have buttons for that right now, I don't think. But I'm just going to get rid of those and use the other ones. 7 I need, my slot machine graphic, and my spin enabled and depress and all that stuff I don't need. I don't need my thumbs. So all this stuff can go, right? I do need these symbols. So banana, bar, bell, my bet line, I don't know. I'll think about using that or not. And I got my blur. I don't need that. That's just an example of blurring symbols. I try to do that as one of my iterations. Didn't kind of work out. Almost like, you know, you do when you press the button, you have this like fake blur, like a blur animation that happens, right? And then it comes back and it lands on the symbol. Didn't really work well. One student had suggested it one time, and I tried it and I told them it's not going to work. Of course, they didn't believe me. The naming process for the symbols matter, all right? In this particular case, I want to be able to match up my array, the results from my array that I get, because I'm going to create an array when we get back to the coding, with the name that's in my asset. We're going to talk about that later on too. Okay, so let's get back, and I'm going to kind of copy this, copy all these assets, and I'm going to when I modify them, I'll share them with you, so you have what I have. All right, so bear with me while I do that. So I'm going to copy these 9 assets and move them over here to this area here. I said move them over here. We're here, like I said. And then I'm going to go in there and delete these previous asset folder just because I'll do it that way. All right, so let's get and do some little bit of manipulation here. So I need a banana GIF. Once I start with 1, here I'll bring up fireworks, and I'll just turn the lights off so you can see what I'm doing. Because sometimes you see the marks, they're a little bit different. Like I said before, I like using fireworks. Doesn't mean just because I like using it, this should be the program for you. You need some kind of graphic manipulation program when you do any kind of, code or whatever. So here I have a problem. I have my banana shape. It's 150 by 120. I need to make it square. I know that I can't go any less here on this scale, which means I first got to rescale this thing so it's 150 by 150, then drop it down to 69 by 69. That's the way I'm going to do it, all right? And you can do the other way around. You can drop this down to 69 wide and with the same scale. I don't want to skew the image. Skewing the image on the web is like the worst. It's like an offense to me, all right? So please, you're going to offend me if you skew the image, right? So please don't do that in any game you ever make. Skewing images are just unprofessional looking, and unless it's for a joke, it doesn't look any good. So that's the first thing. So we can do 2 ways. One, we can scale down. So if I was to say, I want to scale this image down by hand, I can scale it down to 69 by 69, like 69 wide as an example, and it's going to scale so that it's proportional. Like if you notice, I can't scale so that one side is not, because right now it's locked. So width-wise, if I was to go to 69, it's hard for me to do it by hand, it would look like this. And then, of course, I would have to rescale it on the other side. So that's no good. So it's better for me to do some kind of numeric transform, which is the way to go. I'm going to go scale, numeric transform, right? And I'm going to go, instead of doing a scale, right, I'm going to resize, where I go from 150 to 120, and you see that it's locked there, the ratio. I've constrained my proportions so that it's locked the same way. And I definitely want to go to 69 here for the first one. And if you notice, when I drop to 69, it goes to 55. Exactly. That's the exact ratio that it would be. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to do. Now that's right, okay, for sure. The next piece, so this is what my symbol is going to look like in 100%. Okay, so that's how big my symbols are going to be. I'm going to have a smaller slot machine than I used to have, right, which is totally fine. My next one is, because I want to, it's also going to be mobile compatible this way because of my screen size, right? Okay, so here's the next one. So if it's this big, I have to modify my canvas size. So I'm going to say my canvas size then is got to be 69 by 69, starting from the middle anchor. The anchor is going to show how big my canvas size is. So there's a couple ways I can do this. I can do it from here, or with fireworks, I can go modify canvas, trim canvas. And trimming canvas is going to make it the exact width with the wrong height, right? Well, this is okay. I can fix it. I can go back to canvas size. I'll be okay. And then the canvas size, you see the width is right, but the height is wrong. It's the canvas, not the image I'm changing. So I have more canvas, the background from the image. So I'm going to go to 69. Now it's right, but I've got a bit of transparency in the top and the bottom. And then I can go to modify canvas, canvas color, and I can match it up. Let's say it's white, so it looks almost transparent. So this is a more of a closer approximation to what's going to be. I'm going to make it a little larger so you can see it. We go to 200%. And that's what it would look like. Now, if I zoom in even more, just so you see the difference, you see that I've taken this thing from a some kind of graphic from before. So there's a bit of a line here, but who cares, right? I can go in there, clean it up, take the line away, and take away this thing. And it's pretty much white, all right? I'm not going to go in to start doing too much more manipulation. So this is done. This one here is done. It's 69 by 69. I'm going to, because I've opened it where it is, I'm good with the GIF. I'm not going to make it a transparent image, so I'm not going to change it from a GIF to a ping. I'm just going to click save. All right, I know my process now. It's the same for the other one. So I'm going to quickly do this so I can get these things to you. So I'm going to go to the next one. So that's the banana. I'm going to go to the bar, and the same thing. So just bear with me while I do this. So I'm going to go to transform, numeric transform, and if you notice, it'll remember from each size, right? Scale, modify canvas, trim canvas, modify canvas, canvas size, 69, modify canvas, canvas color, white. Done. Save. Next. I'm going to keep going like that until I finish the 7. There's only 7 of them, so bear with me while I do this. And then once it's done, then we'll be okay. Oops, modify, transform. Oops, got to click on it first. There we go. I'm just trying to get all this done. And it'd be nice if I could set up a little script to do it. The time to take to do a little script, the batch is larger than it would be for me just to do it by hand. Believe it or not, it's undoable. It's totally doable. But it doesn't make any sense in our particular situation. And it's like watching paint peel, but at least the process, you're noticing the process is the exact same, because what I want to do is I want to present to you the same stuff that'll work for all of our images. Now we'll have images to work with that I can share with you so you can do your testing. Now you might do a different slot machine than I will, right? And that's totally fine. But I want you to see my process so that way you have an idea. And the biggest problem that students have, and this is interesting, I'm going to leave my bet line out for a second. I'm going to do that. I'll do that. Blank. I need a blank too, by the way. I need blanks because if I don't have the right blank, it won't cover over. I don't want to assume that the blank is going to be the right size. So this is where I don't care if it's skewed. I'm just going to go 69 by 69 here, right? Because the blank is just a blank. There's no background to it. So 69 by 69. And I'll go modify canvas, trim canvas. And then we're done with the blank, right? Because I don't care about that. See? So that we need the blank though, because we're gonna present the blank at times as well, right? And you notice how the byte size is going down as I'm doing this, right? Like the byte size for my banana is 3 kilobytes. It's minuscule. It's good, right? Cherry. So from 23 kilobytes, same thing with the cherry. Modify, transform, numeric transform, moving down to 69, keeping it proportional, right? Modify canvas, canvas size. Actually, I can probably do that one too, but I wanted to do trim canvas. I think it's this. And then modify canvas. Sorry, I remember the shortcut keys now. Modify canvas, canvas size to a larger size, and canvas color, white. Save. Almost there. I know it's watching paint peel, guys. I apologize, but try my best here. Modify, transform. But you see what I'm doing here? What I'm trying to do here is I'm resizing everything outside of the application. There was a question I asked some web students today. I also have a web class that I do every week, and it's web fundamentals. And they were asking, they were saying, so what should I do? What's more important? What should I do first? And the answer I always say to them is, always, if you can, the right thing to do is resize everything outside of your application. Do not let your code resize for you. If there's too many cycles involved, and you still have these long load times when you do this on the web, right? So, size. See if I can talk and actually do that. How about those? And spell it. At least you've seen the process from start to finish. This is the idea here. We have 2 more to go. That was the grapes with an orange and a 7, and we're done. So modify. modify, transform. So yeah, one of the challenges we had when, you know, from before was when we were starting to do stuff on the web was that keeping proportional was hard. We didn't have the tools. When Photoshop was being used before, it was hard to use Photoshop to do things proportionally. Now, of course, over time, Photoshop's improved. Now, I'm talking about years now. Okay, it's been good for a long time. But when I first started off, Photoshop was just starting off. So it was quite a few years ago, as you can imagine. And of course, you know, we didn't have the tools we have today. And this is where you know, things like fireworks came from. They said, like, can we not build a tool that's lighter than Photoshop that does kind of the same things, but just for the web, mainly for the web? And that's where fireworks was so beautiful when it came out. But I mean, I understand their idea. They want to use the other tools. They don't want to give you too many tools to learn. Imagine you're a web developer, you know, Photoshop, Fireworks, Illustrator, and I keep going with tools. It's like it's insanity, right? So, and that's why it makes sense from Adobe to cut things down a little bit. Plus, from a support perspective, I'm sure it's a little bit crazy. Okay, so we've done all this. We've got all of our things. Let me talk about the bet line. And in order for me to talk about the bet line, for example, I've got to bring up my the actual background image for this thing, the slot machine. So if I look at the slot machine, this is what we have right now for my slot machine, right? So if I zoom in here, you can see that I probably want the bet line to span from here to about here. Now, I don't know how long that is, but I can certainly measure it. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to kind of go from here. I'm going to do it approximate, and it's going to go right to the other side. And I'm going to kind of use shift to kind of constrain it. So that's, you know, right to, let's say, and I'm probably going to go right to this arrow here, right? So that makes sense. So let's see, put that long, maybe even expand it a little bit more, right? So it kind of goes right up to this point here, my guess. Let's say from here, and I'm going to move that down just a touch, so that way it makes sense. That would probably be the bet line for me, right? So if I look at that, the bet line to me is 246 long, right? By about, and that's just a pixel. I may want to make that 3 pixels in height. So if I go like 3, to make it a little bit more solid looking and even. I don't want to make it. I don't want to make it 2. I'll show you this in a second. I've kind of gone to a height of 3, and it's gone back to 1. Let's undo that for a second so you can see what I'm talking about. So maybe the actual line height or line thickness would be 2 or 3. And the reason for this is because if I make it only 1, it's hard to keep it centered, right? Because then it's kind of, or if I go to 2, where do you put it, up or down, right? It's got to be up or down. Whereas this, I know that the position, what position is going to be, and I also know that I'm probably going to want to make it this color. Now I do have an image for this thing, this bet line. I'm just going to bring it up for a second so we can see it. It looks like this. It's just a line. That's all I've done with it. So it's just a line with a bit of a shadow. It's rounded on one side and the other, but I don't really care for it. Right now it's 606 with a height of 6. It was a thicker line for a bigger slot machine. And I'm pretty happy with this, which is a bit transparent. If you notice the transparency, well, it's 100%, but it looks like, you know, it's kind of black. I could make it transparent as well, but I think this is probably the right thing. Move it down a little bit. And I'm kind of probably more partial to it being at that position. So it's got to be 236 wide by one high, as an example. And I got to trim the canvas or fit the fit canvas to show you this, right? So now, well, I did the wrong thing, undo. What I meant to do is take this, cut it for a second, please, and go put it into its own image. File, new, and then height of 4, that makes more sense. And then I'm going to, now it's 249, 250 is not gonna kill me. How about that? 250 is gonna be okay if I make it 250, just to make it even, right? 250 by 4. So let's do that, and it'll be transparent background when I copy it in. This is what the line looks like, and when I zoom in here to 200%, it'll be like this, right? That's what it'll look like. So that's really the line in a nutshell, right? That's where it's going to be. So it's 246 the width, but it's actually the whole thing is 250. I could make this 250 to match it up. So let's say if I go 250, there we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify canvas. I'm going to fit canvas, so it spans the whole thing. It has to be 250 as an example. And I'm going to save this image as the bet line. So I'm going to go back to the bet line to save over it. Yes, replace. Bye-bye. Good. Now I got my image as 250. Let me just bring that image back. So I'm going to cut this image back, go back to my background, paste it in. And I could have pasted it in place, but let's just move it back to where it's supposed to be, where it looks right to me. And don't worry if it overlaps or whatever. I don't care. I just wanted to make it look good. So that's where the bet line is going to be. And it's going to be layered on top of everything else, so it looks like it's the shapes are underneath it. It's an illusion again. It's a layering thing. All right, so that's where my bet line is. Now I need to record its position, and I need to record its details. So here's my bet line. So let's say bet line. And the position is, so the width is 250 and by 4, and the position on the actual image is 61 by 227. So 61 by 227. That's the actual position in the world, right? And I'm going to, now that I've recorded that, it's important for us to do that because we like to keep track of this information. Otherwise, we're going to be off, right, which would be bad. Okay, so I've got this stuff. Here it is. And 69 by 69, eh? Okay, so let me do a couple things here now that I've saved this. I'm going to just exit out of here. And I'm going to exit out of here, too. I'm not going to save anything. I've already saved this bet line, so I'm good. Now I'm going to transfer my new assets and my new asset info across. Sorry, just got to check this one more time. Make sure it's the right bet line that I'm getting. See, that's not right. Sorry. I knew there was something fishy about this. Look at gif.ping. 162 pixels, right? So let me go back and kill this one. Sorry, and then I'll re-energize this one for a second, just for a second. And I'm going to save it as a ping. File, save as, oh, sorry, GIF image. I'll save it as a GIF image. We call it bet line, and it says the format will flatten layers. I know, thank you. And I don't want to add a file name extension. I just want to keep it as is. The bet line, okay, sure. All right, good. Now, this is the one I want to use. No, I don't care about that. Go back here. And I've got my bet line back, and it's 13K as opposed to 162K. It's much better. Get rid of this. Okay, now I've got enough to show to send you guys my love, right? So I'm going to give you all my love. There we go. I'm going to grab all these images again, just to be clear. Actually, I probably want to grab that whole thing again, this whole slot machine asset thing. Go back to the Windows side for a second. And this slot machine asset stuff that I've been using, which I'm probably having here, I'm just going to get rid of it. Is that slot machine or slot machine assets? Let's take a look, take a peek at that. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know why it's like that. But that's not what I want. I mean, I want this one. You see, this one's it. That's probably what I had from before. Yeah, so I want to add to this. I'm just going to copy it over. So I'm going to get rid of this one, and then I'll upload it to GitHub. So minor changes. Yay. Okay, let's go to here, and I want to grab this one. I want to copy it. I want to move back here, and I want to paste it. And when I do that, I have them back, but these are the new ones. And what I want to do is I want to go into Visual Studio here, and I got to make sure I'm not debugging. And when I go back into my images, chug, Tom, because I'm recording and doing everything at once. I got a couple of background, by the way, a couple of backgrounds. I got a JPEG background and I got a PNG background. I don't care about my JPEG background. Get rid of that. I do care about the rest. I don't care about my DS store. That's just from the Mac. Or my thumbs. I don't care about that either. But I do care about everything else. So I'm going to kind of, I think I got everything. Control A to hit it all. And then I'm going to pull them all into images. And that should kind of solidify it all. Apply, yes, copy all over them. That's good. And kill this one. So now when I go back and magnify this, go back to normal, I have everything I had before. And if I want to test it, I can hover over and I can see that I got a bar and so on. This is good. I'm making progress here. All right, so I'm going to save this thing. And I'm going to go back to Team Explorer, and this is where you're going to have a chance to get all these things instead of doing it all by yourself. I'm also going to click on these untracked files and add them all, just because a bunch of little things have changed. I'm going to say updated slot machine assets. I'm going to do that, click commit. It should send everything to you nice in a nice package. You should have it now. So please go up there and grab it so we can be on the same page. Are we good? Okay, this is good, but I'm going to have to modify these assets again, right? And I'll talk about this in a bit. Now, we can go through life using one asset at a time, like we've been doing. And right now, if you notice, in our manifest, if I was to look at the manifest, and this is what our friend was asking me earlier today, right? If I go back into my scripts, into my objects, and if I look at, there's a scene, a label, and a button, and I also have different states here. And inside my core game.ts file, if I bring that up, notice that I have a manifest here that I'm using. And this is great for small little programs, right? But for a larger project, it's much better if I use a sprite sheet, okay? So how do I make a sprite sheet? This is where, if you don't have Texture Packer, you should get it or get access to it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to export it, and you're going to have the, you know, the fruits of my labor, right? I'm going to do for you. But this is for my asset, for my slot machine. You're going to have to make one for yourself, right? So let's do this together, right? So, yeah. Sorry? Oh, where is it, you mean? Let's see. It's probably on Centennial College, but, you know, you never can tell, right? Let's see where, maybe I put it under my name in this particular case. I may have inadvertently left it there. Let's go and check. GitHub, and let me see. I pushed it to, let's go to me, and repositories, and no, it should be under Centennial. Let's just check that and make sure it's like that. But you never can tell, you know, with these insanities. I think it's there. Let me see. If I go into Centennial College, if not, I'll just make a new one. No big deal. Here it is. But where is my, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. 14 days ago. Where the hell did this go? Oh, maybe I didn't sync it. How about that process? How about that? How about them apples? Sync. Yeah, let's go back now and refresh, and you'll see that it's the first one. Yeah, that's the one. So under Centennial College, it's there now. It says updated to slot machine assets. Yay. Okay, so what was I going to say now? Yeah, I was going to do a Texture Packer demo. So let's try this out and see what I mean by this all, right? So I want to bring my Texture Packer stuff into a sprite sheet, and we're going to start using sprite sheets as opposed to using just a manifest. The manifest will keep for a couple things. I might keep it for the background image for my slot machine, right? Because I don't care for that to be part of my sprite sheet. I could add it in. It's not that big, but it is definitely larger than a small little image. I can pack a lot more into a sprite sheet that's where there's smaller images. Let's do that. So one, I've got to bring up Texture Packer. And again, I've been talking about this program for a while. Now it's the first time we're going to use it. It looks like this, again, from codeandweb.com. Now I've set it up to Unity because it's also compatible with Unity, right, and other frameworks. But for now, what I'm going to use it for is for Create.js. And if I scroll down here, there is an Easel.js Create.js outlet for it, which I'm going to use, and I'm going to press Create Project. Okay, so Texture Packer, what it does, like I showed you before, it creates an area that I can drag and drop sprites, and it's going to create a sprite sheet for me on the fly. All right, so let's try this out. So I'm going to go into my assets, and not that one, not that asset. I'm going to go into slot machine assets. I can drag the whole folder in here, but I don't want to do that for a second. And I'll show you why in a second. I definitely want I don't want my background JPEG. I'm going to drop everything in here, but I'm going to remove some stuff in a second. So let's go down to here, and I'll add everything. Here's all of it, except for my Excel worksheet, which doesn't make any sense. And I'll just drag and drop it in here and see what happens. So I've got this thing. Now take a look with, when I do this, what I get. I get this plus all these. That doesn't make any sense to me, right? And the reason why is because this takes up so much more room, right? Why would I do this? I wouldn't, is the answer, right? So I don't want this one. This one here is this background.jpg. I definitely don't want this one. And I didn't pass it across anyway. So I want to just remove this one. Yeah. And I don't want this one because this is going to be a kind of a fixed image that I want. So I can probably get rid of this one too. So let's get rid of this background image. But now I have a very simple group of images that I can use. And if I want to make this square as an example, so 4 squared, I can do it so it looks like this. So this is my new sprite sheet, where I have all my objects here in my sprite sheet as opposed to them being in their own objects. So I'm going to load this one sprite sheet, and it's going to generate another XML file that I'm going to use as a template to load into my project as opposed to one at a time. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So I've accepted what it is. I'm going to publish. It's going to ask me some questions, like, for example, what's the JSON file called? So it'll give me a JSON file or an XML file, depending on what I want, right? So I need to put it in the right location. So I know that it's on my desktop, and I called it slot machine assets. And so I might as well put it in there. I'm just going to call this thing my texture atlas, which I'm going to call atlas. Okay? I'm just going to call this thing atlas. Okay? Just to keep the name low, and press save. Then it's going to write a sprite sheet that's only 277 by 277 with compression. It's the neat thing, right? And I'm going to press OK. Now, what does this do? Now, you notice the line is actually there too. So even my bet line is there, which is totally cool. And that might be a decision we choose to take out of there, because that's also holding me back in a bit. Okay, so let me just go back here and let's take a look at this. This is actually the sprite sheet. It's one ping file that I've created. So if I was to, and let me just also save the TPS file. So I'm going to save project as, and I'm going to go back into the same place. So it's going to be under desktop. Now the project file means that if I've saved it and you have Texture Packer, you can open the project and modify it. That's why I'm saving it for you if you're one of those people who actually bought Texture Packer like I did. So I'm going to go back to slot machine assets, and I'm going to call this thing slot machine. And it's going to be a TPS file, right? So I'm going to say save. And now that's, if I close this off, I can always go back in there and open it up, and I can launch the same view instead of me dragging and dropping again. I don't have to do that. So what does it produce for me, right? Well, first of all, I don't want this JPEG image. Let me get rid of that. I do need the ping image though, and that's the biggest image. Notice that my ping image is 467K, right, without compression. My the other big one is my blank is 116 bytes. Look at that one, bytes. That's not even a K, right? Because it's nothing. It's just like the blank white background, right? But my other images, the biggest ones are my buttons, which are 176K, right, altogether. But my atlas, here's something to note, my atlas.ping file, including all my buttons and everything else, is only 56K with compression. That's why, my friends, that's why we use the sprite sheet as opposed to using each individual image. Smaller to load, faster to load up our programs and so on, and they look pretty good. Okay. So I got this, and I also got this JSON file. Let's take a look at it in Text Wrangler to see what I get. So I'm going to go open file in Text Wrangler, just text editor for us to look at. It looks like this, right? So I've got my frames, and if you notice it says bet line, banana, bar, bell, blank, and it's all in alphabetical order pretty much, up until I get my spin buttons. So even my spin buttons here and my generic buttons here. I got a bunch of different things here that I've got. I might use my generic button for other things later on. I don't need it right now, but I definitely can use my spin button and my bet max button and all these other buttons for layouts. I don't need this piece. This is just identifying where I got my stuff. My smart object, blah, 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 for easel.js. Gives them a little bit of props that we've used them, but I'm paying for the program, so it's not necessary that it's there. And if you notice, it says animations, right? Well, these animations in the future, this is how we're going to do animations. These are all frames, and we're going to do some page flipping animations just through Texture Packer. Neat. Now they also give us some additional information here. So this is the, if you look at the frames here, it's X, Y, width and height, and a bunch of other offsets. And if you notice, there was no offsets. I took the offsets off of this one. It also gives me the name of the image that I'm getting, this atlas.ping file that I'm loading up later on. Okay, so this is what I need. I'm going to save this up, and I'm going to go back here, kind of close this off. And now I just need these three things. I need atlas, this one, and I need my new file, which is called slot machine TPS. This one. I'm going to copy these three things, go back across the Windows side. I'm going to open up my project files here locally. Come on. Oh, I clicked it twice. I got to be patient because I'm doing too many things at once here. My machine's going to be mad at me pretty soon. And paste. Okay, cool. I've got my project files. If you notice my JSON file and my sprite sheet as an example, in this slot machine TPS file, which I'm going to include in my my files here. I'm not going to run it yet. I'm just going to go to the solution, and I'll update this one as well. And I'll do another little update for you guys. So I'm going to go into assets. I'm going to go into images, and I'm going to drag and drop these things, these three, into my images. Oops, there we go. Again, please keep in mind that I will not have a background.jpg. I'm just going to get rid of that one from my scope. And now when I update, I'm going to do another little update on Team Explorer, Home, Changes, and I'll say added spreadsheet. So, commit. Yes, I'll save everything. And Home, and I'll put unsync commits and sync, and now you should have my spreadsheet too. There you go. Okay, I got my spreadsheet. Now I got a code to use it. This is before I've done any code integration. I'm still just doing assets collection, right? And you might think, what, like this is a lot of work for just getting my assets into the game. Yeah, I want you to think about this because when you do your side scroller, it's going to be the same. You need to adjust your images, you need to adjust your assets, make sure that they're right size and all that stuff. It's part of our process. Once you got everything, I'm going to leave my big images here. So inside my regular manifest here, I'm going to leave these here, but I'm also going to include another atlas that I'm going to use that I'm going to load up separately. Now, we need to look at some of the API documentation in order for me to use my atlas now, because I've got an atlas file, but I want to use it here. And how does it look? So I'm going to go back into my API documentation. I'm just going to go into this side. I'm going to pull up easel.js. So let's look at this together. And it's really important for us to be able to look at the API documentation for anything we're using. I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse when I say this kind of stuff, but please bear with me while I'm saying this because some students or beginners who haven't done this before, they get a little bit frustrated with the amount of reading we have to do. It's part of it, right? Okay, so here's a great idea of spreadsheets, and it tells you my spreadsheet format is like this. My images are these. I can say this is my image. Here are my frames, right? These are my frames. I can choose height, width. You can actually explicitly name them like this, or I can do it like this, which is what my texture packer gives me. It gives me this format, which is totally cool. That means I have some, here's good, registration values. Look at, I can even include those, where my registration marks are, my spacing, and my margins. So 4 additional offsets that I can use in addition to a count value that, and not only just the X and Y locations. Okay, cool. So this is how we can do animations. If you notice there's animations, I have a walk animation with these frames. What are these frames pointing to? They're pointing to these things. Each of these things is a frame, right? Let's pull up what I have here in Texture Packer one more time. So in Text Wrangler. And I'll pull up that atlas.json file in Text Wrangler. So I'll show you for a second. So here we go. So each one of these is frames. And then we have our animations. Well, our animations right now are single frame animations, right? The banana, bar, 3, bell, whatever, right? Each of them is pointing to this array here, this frames array. 0, this is the first element, the second element, and so on in order all the way to the 14th element down here, which is actually 15th, right? 0 to 14. right? So that's what it's doing. This is what this is describing. It's describing where each of our assets or sprites are located in the sprite sheet. It's a sprite map, or what we like to call a texture atlas, right? That's why I called it atlas. That's what it really is, okay? Now, there's two ways to do this. I could, and I'm looking at Stephen here, I could bring this file in or read this file from the file system as an JSON file using something like a jQuery or even JavaScript. No problem. I could do that. I can just copy, for our sakes, we're going to copy it. It's so small. I'm going to copy it into our manifest. I'm going to hard code it in. You may want to do it differently. The good thing about bringing it in is you have control of what the names are, and the assets, the frames wouldn't change if we were going to read it in, as opposed to it being copied physically. Let's go back to our documentation for a second. So that's where we're heading. How do I use it? So here's my animations, my frame rate, and all that stuff, right? I can give an optional frame rate. How do I use it? Well, my data is this. I'm going to call this data, or whatever it's going to be. Right, here's my data. It's my data array. Well, what does that look like? It looks like this with doing one of these. Var data is equal to. So I need to do that. That's the first thing I need to do. If I go back to look at my array, right? And I need to put some kind of semicolon at the end. This. Here we go. There's my data array, right? So all my objects, right? So that's the first thing I need to do. That's the first thing. Next, here's my sprite sheet. I have to define a sprite sheet, whatever I'm going to call it, as a new create.js sprite sheet and pass in the data in there. That's it. And then when I assign my sprite sheet, instead of us creating a bitmap, this is where we have to go back and change all of our objects from our object array that we're using right now from bitmaps to sprites, because what I'm saying is I want to use the sprite sheet and I want to use the run animation to pull it up as an example. Okay, that's what this is doing. So I need to know that this is the way it's going to be when I include my sprite sheet. So when I want to use it, I need to do it this way. I declare a new sprite object. So when I extend my objects, whatever the game objects are, I've got to extend the sprite object from a create.js perspective. I've been extending the bitmap object. That's a totally different thing. But this is what I need to include in my line, and this is what I got to do that. Okay, so let's go back. Let's do the coding now. Okay, so I need to include something up here. I'm probably thinking about calling this my data, like I said before. So now the great thing is I have it right here in Visual Studio. I can double click on this. I can open up my JSON format here, and I can basically do all my changes. So var, right, data is equal to, it's just a data array, a bunch of objects. I can close this off like this. I can kind of pull all this up here and copy it, and I can go back into my game.ts file, and in here, you're going to say, Tom, isn't there a better place to put this? Yes, there is. Yes, there is, right? But we're going to get to that later. I'm going to paste it in here, and I'll Control V to paste. So there's our data. It's going to be right inside of our game.ts file, all right? Notice that we have an image atlas.ping file. Is this the right location for our atlas.ping file from a path perspective? The answer is no. We have to look up here for the type of pathing. So we have to take this big beginning path, this images. By the way, can I preload my ping image that I'm going to refer to here? And the answer is yes, you can, but there's a bit of finagling to get it in there, right? So for now, we're going to say no. We're just going to leave it as is and copy it. So I'm going to copy this and put it over here, right? Just so we have the right path. That's the right path for our atlas. Control S, just say. Okay, cool. So we've got my data, right? Now I need a reference to my sprite sheet, right? And by the way, I haven't touched any of this stuff. I can get rid of my back button, next button, and all this kind of stuff eventually. For now, I'll leave it as is because I haven't changed up my state machine in any way, right? I haven't pulled up anything yet. So I may need these things for now. By the way, should I load these into my sprite sheet? These buttons? And the answer is yeah, I should. Might as well. The only thing I can't do is add this into my sprite sheet, which is an audio file. Right? Okay. Here's my animations. Here's my pet line, my banana, all that kind of stuff. Now what I want to do is when I go down here and where I load my manifest, here's my preloading function. This would be a great place, right, to load up my, to this stuff here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one of these. I'm going to say I'm going to define a new sprite sheet called Atlas. Right now, if you notice, I have some game assets that are in the global namespace. I'm going to add another one to that. Instead of just being a stage or whatever, I'm going to add another one that's underneath this that I'm going to call, it doesn't matter where it is, that I'm going to call Atlas. So I'm going to say var Atlas, and it's going to be of type create.js.spritesheet. There's my Atlas. I've kind of typed it. Typing is good because it's going to give me some more code hinting for my Atlas, right? And if I scroll down, I'm going to define it here. I'm going to say, well, Atlas, right, is equal to a new create.js.spritesheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass into it data, my data block. Now I can refer to Atlas, right, as an example, just like I did in my API documentation, where I say something like this. Whatever my animation is called, whatever my object is called, is a new sprite where I pass in a reference to the Atlas and the friendly name of the animation that I'm calling. The animation in this particular case is my single frame, which is representing my buttons or my whatever assets are in the Atlas. That's what I'm doing, okay? As opposed to me loading each one at a time. Okay, let's go back and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So there's my Atlas. Now, Atlas might be okay. I could call this my texture Atlas. I could call this different things. I'm making it small, just so that we know what it is, Atlas, right? And it's going to be Atlas that I'm going to pass in, and I'm going to refer to the data. Now, this is why I like to put this in here. If I want to say Atlas betline, that's going to be my new sprite. Now, here's my problem. When I describe other assets, like for example, I have my back button, my next button, my start button, I do have other assets I need to include. One of them is my image for my background. My background image, background.jpg, I cannot include that in my Atlas because it's too big. It defeats the purpose in some way. So I'm going to copy this thing, and I'm going to put this back here like this. And sorry, copy it. Let's try that again, Tom. Copy, and we'll take a short break after this, and paste. And this will be, we'll just call this thing background. And I like to try and copy the name of the asset that I'm getting. It's exactly from the actual, whatever it's called. So background.ping, it's called background with capital B. Again, I may want to make that smaller. And if I've got everything small here, I might as well make this small b, just to make it the same. And again, you could kind of coordinate things so they're the same. So all I've done is I've added a reference to my background. I've built up my assets. They're a little larger. That's one thing I've done. I made references to what I've already transferred. Okay, that's one. Part two, now that I've done this, I need to go into my scripts and take a look at how my objects look. So far, I have buttons, and I have labels, and I have a scene, right? But I don't have a new scene. I need to make a new object that I'm going to call a game object, right? And this game object is going to extend the sprite class, right? Because it makes sense for me to make a generic game object that I'm going to use to extend the sprite class so that I can put it in, and I can layer my stuff on top that way, as opposed to always going like this. My sprite is my registration value. There's this, there's that. By the time I go through all that process over and over again, there's going to be a lot of duplication. I might as well create a class. So let's do that quickly now. So I'm going to go in here and do a couple things. Right. So in my objects, I'm going to go right-click, and I'm going to add in a generic game object. Now, please, if you're from Unity World, please forgive me for the name of game object, but it's actually quite normally used across different things. So I'm going to kind of do a new TypeScript file that I'm going to call game object, just all lowercase. Right, and press OK. So my generic game object, when finally it does what it's supposed to do, there it is. I'm going to save all, by the way. It makes me nervous. And when my game object, remember how we did this before. We create a module definition. The module definition, let me just zoom in here for a second so you guys can see this a little bit clearly. The module definition has to be the same module name as my folder name, all right, if I want to keep to the convention, right? My folder name is objects. It's got to be objects. That's my module name. And I already have an object name, and I could have made my module all in one big file. But why? If I can break it up, it's easy. I can digest the elephant in chunks as opposed to trying to eat them whole. I'll choke if it's too big, the code, right? So here's my module objects. I create a space for this with the curly braces. Inside there, I want to define a new class. So here's I'm going to call this, of course, my game object class, right? That's what it's going to be. So I'm going to say export. I'm going to export the whole class, game object. I'm going to call it like what it looks like in Unity now, game object, capital G, capital O, right? That's how it should be, right? And if I just do this, that's enough for me to say that's just a new object, but that's not what I want. I want my game objects, every one of my game objects, to extend, right, the create.js.sprite object. Okay, now when I do that, as soon as I do that, when I create a constructor for my object, so here's my constructor, for my generic game object. And by the way, we can also think about this as, am I ever going to, so I'm going to put it out there for you, am I ever going to create an object in my game object that's going to be instantiated? Am I ever going to instantiate a game object? Like, should I ever instantiate a game object, or should I make game object buttons, game object, different things, slots, or whatever it's going to be? And the answer is probably I could, but in later iterations, once we make our side scroller, you're going to see that I'm going to be using my game object as an abstract class. I'm not going to actually instantiate an object from it. Okay, so that's where I'm going to go. Right now, we're going to use it as a real class, like a superclass that we're going to use. Okay, so let's do this. So I'm going to say, here's my constructor, and my constructor itself, I need to say constructor. Remember, that's what we do in TypeScript. And my constructor, once I do this, it's going to ask me to make a call to my superclass. So let's do that. So I'm going to say super. When I open the bracket here, it's going to give me what I need. I need a sprite sheet. All my sprite sheets that I'm going to make for all my game objects are going to be with the Atlas sprite sheet. So I might as well pass it in right now. I never have to pass this in again, right? So it's all my sprite sheet's taken care of. Now my frame or animation, and it's got to be of type string. So all I'm going to pass into my constructor for my game object is a string that's going to define what I'm looking for. What frame am I looking for to show, right? So this is going to be something like my sprite string. Sprite string, you can call it an image string. Maybe image string is better. That's what I'm really looking at. A texture string, whatever you want to call it. Now I don't have an image string, right? I have to pass it into the constructor. So I'm going to listen for it from the constructor. I'm going to say it's going to be of type string, right? So it's going to be called image string, type string, right? It's going to be passed into my constructor. I'm going to listen for it. When my game object is going to demand that I enter a string object in there. What other things should I also probably ask for if I'm making a new class, I might as well ask for as much as I can for my constructor object, or create getters and setters that I need to make it work. What things could I ask for? X and Y. I need to probably do that too. So I might as well do that so I have my X and Y position right away. So let's do that. So I'll say, I'm going to ask my X's, just like we did last time, which is a number, and my Y, which is also a number. I can also ask for other things later on, like my registration values and so on. I'm not going to do that right now. And we're going to also think about, should I or shouldn't I do this? We'll talk about that later on. But for now, this is good. So now I've got my X and Y values, my image string. I don't have to touch my image string. I'm passing it into my superclass because now my game object is a sprite. It's not a game object. We have to think about it as a sprite. So it inherits all the sprite classes and abstract objects that includes that's included in there. Okay, that's one thing. Second, I need to, after my super call, I need to assign x's and y's. Now I do have a this.x because all sprites have an x coordinate, which is equal to x, right? And this.y, which is equal to y. I need to know those things. And I need to kind of recenter my registration mark because by default, my registration mark is at the top left corner of the screen, and I don't want that. I want it to be at the middle, right? There's some things around this, all right? If I put it in the screen, an example is of this, right? If I go back to, we have to kind of think about this for a second. If I go back to my object, this is where my background would be a bitmap background. It's not going to move. I'm not going to have motion. I'm not going to flip it around. I'm not going to do anything with it. It's going to be a straight bitmap. I'm not going to change my registration marks on it. It's going to be the top left corner because I want it to fit exactly in my screen where I want it. All that stuff is going to be the same. I'm not going to change that around. But what about my banana? Sorry to say it that way. Let's pick another one. What about the bell, right? What about the bell, right? Let's take a look at the bell for a second, not the banana, all right? Not the banana. The bell, right? What is the central mark to this thing, right? And how did I come up with where it exists? I want this thing to appear somewhere. Am I making it so that the top left corner is how I'm registering it? Let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I open it up, or my buttons as an example. So let's open up also my background, because we got to be very specific here. We want to mess ourselves up here, right? Here's my background. My background starts. This is the local coordinate system for my background, which I'm probably going to make a container, right? Hear me out here, right? It's all going to be self-contained, right? So if I make this a container and I want to put my image here, how am I accounting for where it's going to be? What's my registration mark for my image? And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So I take this, copy it, and I go back to my background, and I'm going to paste it. Try this again. Take this, copy it, Mac user, and paste it right over here. So here's my bell, right? And I'm going to zoom in here so we can see what I'm talking about. My bell's going to appear nicely inside this little space here, right? That I've worked very hard to measure, right? Oops. And let's try that again. I meant to do this, and what I want to do is I want to lock the background so that we don't fool around with that. I want to move this around, so it's got to be here somewhere, right? Like I said. So how do I know the x and what are these x and y coordinates pertaining to? Is it the middle, or is it the top left? Top left. So if it's the top left, do I need to change my registration marks for all the sprites in my game right now? In this game that we're using? And the answer is no. In the Mail Pilot game we're going to make, the side scroll we're going to make the next project, yes, you need to know what it's going to be the middle, because I want to have control over where this thing appears. Here, I'm layering it. I'm creating an interface. Oh, I got another one over here. I'm creating an interface of where this is going to be, so I don't want to change the registration marks at all. I want them to be exactly where they are, right? Okay. And the same thing goes with this. This one, if you notice my background image, I'm just going to unhinge that for a second. It doesn't start, even though it says 0, 0, it does start at 0, 0, but the background is transparent on the sides. So that's okay. So even though it shows that there's space here, actually the image starts right here. So this is good. So this is how we're going to do it. So we're not going to change the registration marks. This is why I brought this up, because it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that means this is it. That's all I need, right? I got I'm creating my sprite, I'm putting my sprite down, and it's being created in the exact same location. Okay, whoa. Ho, ho. All right, this is where we go crazy now. My button, I have my button. And my button object, if I was to bring that up, is not a sprite. My button object that has a lot of information here, the way it runs, my button object is a bitmap. And I have a problem because I have both bitmap buttons and sprite buttons. So I need to make those buttons clickable, those new bet buttons and so on, but they can't be the button class, right? Because the button class, unfortunately, it extends the bitmap class. It's not a button for me anymore, the buttons that I'm using. So there's a couple of directions we can take here, right? I could make it so that my button is also a bitmap, but that means I need to bring in my buttons, which are those fine buttons that go next and open and whatever, start, that whole start screen, next screen, and back and end. All those buttons we already have in play. I've got to go bring those into my sprite sheet and load them in as sprites. That's one option. A. B. I create another button. Instead of a button that's a generic button, like which is of type bitmap, I make another button that's a sprite button. That might be easier for us, okay? And a sprite button, right, would be the same kind of thing. I would be extending my game object, right? So instead of us having this the first time we're going to extend our game object, I'm going to make a sprite button. Okay. So first, let's finish up our game object. Is there anything else I want to add to my game object at this time? Right? And the answer is right now I don't, right? Because I mean I don't have an update function for my you know, I don't need an update function here yet or anything like that. I could add it later, and if I wanted to affect all, this is where the cascade comes in. If I want to affect all other objects that are derived from my game object, I could add things to my game object and they would be derived. Okay? For now, let's leave it as is, and we'll see how this goes. All right. So number one. This is the first piece. Second piece, I've got to add it into my index.html as a big kind of an object. Now, I know that I want to involve it with my, I won't probably have it in label or my buttons or my scenes, right? But I'm probably going to have it somewhere. And this is where my label, again, I have a problem with my label because my label is the one I have right now is it's centered. My registration marks are in the center, and I may want to make them in the top left corner. So my label, my current label, doesn't work for me either. We'll come back to that in a sec. One problem at a time is what I like to kind of say. So let's put this in. I'm going to drag and drop my new game object into my scene, into my thing here. It becomes a, I'm just dropping it right underneath the config. It's got to be one of the top level objects because I may have to create other objects from it. So I want to kind of make it come right after my config. And I'm going to save. Number one. Second thing, in my game.ts file, for now, and by the way, there is a really cool program for Stephen and for other people who care, who want to use Visual Studio Code. There is another piece of an NPM module you can use if you're a Node.js user, where you can use something called TDS, right? Or TSD, which is a TypeScript definition file, where you can actually load it through NPM and search for it. Like, for example, I could do a command like tsd install jQuery. And then it's going to install it into a typings module, and it even keeps track of all this stuff so it doesn't clutter your screen. So that's one step closer. Next time I do this course, maybe I won't even use Visual Studio anymore, right? Because that's how good Visual Studio Code's becoming. Okay, but for now, we need to put this in. So I need to kind of drag and drop my game object, reference to my game object.ts into my my hierarchy, and I'm probably going to put it in the same location as I have here before my label, definitely under my config, and definitely after all of this stuff, right? So it's going to probably come in here somewhere. I'm going to drag and drop it in here. So here's my game object. There it is. I'm going to leave it alone because I'm going to kind of space it out so we can see it. Okay, good. So my game object's there. I've added my game object into play. I'm going to update GitHub right now and take a brief break. And then when we come back, I'm going to extend my game object to create the stuff that I need. So I'm going to go changes. I'm going to include all, and I'm going to add added game object. Commit. And I'm going to go home, and I'm going to say unsync commits and sync. Now, right now, you might say, well, it's useless. But we'll see as we go forward that it's actually quite a useful structure we're going to be using. So let's take a brief break, and we'll come back, and we'll continue.